Kerrit Podcast. Podcast, good song.
Yeah, this sounds like something carrots could grow to.
Crunch into us.
What's up, Doc? What are we doing?
I don't know.
Fuck them.
Crunch.
What'd you get? What happened to your forehead there?
I picked a zit or a scab or something. And
Oh, geez.
now it's bleeding.
Oh, goodness. That's... Oh, that's so unfortunate. You should get like a cat that can lick it off, because
Yeah.
cats, they have that fun like saliva and like the rough tongue, and I feel like maybe the rough tongue would be bad on it, actually, in talking out loud about this.
It just keeps going.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I don't even know what to say. I feel like there's a joke in there that writes itself, and I don't even want to touch base with this. I'm like, get away from me, base.
I mean, I don't want to touch it either, but I kind of have to.
You know, they actually say that you can use super glue instead of stitches. So I don't know if you need stitches for that, but you could do that.
Yeah, definitely. In the early 1900s, that's when that was a thing.
It's a real thing. You can do it now. No lie.
I've seen people do it. Like people at work at Jimmy John's. Like there's a guy that he cut his finger, and he's like, "Oh, I'll just use super glue." And I'm like, "You're a fucking moron." Like you could also get workman's comp right now, but whatever.
I would just recommend getting away from the sandwiches, because like I don't like no tomato, also no red items at all. Like, what's this?
Are these peppers? No, they're coagulated blood chunks.
Yummy. Yum, nom, 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 nom. You know, I am a vampire. I can't eat any of this. I only was going to kill you, but there's coagulated blood chunks, so you can live for the night.
I can't get over how bright it is there. It seems like we're on a time difference. Like you've filmed all yours already, and then 2 hours later I filmed mine. It's so crazy.
I literally would love to show the YouTube audience, like the light is reflecting off of the apartment windows across the street, so
Yeah.
like, you can see how truly nice it is. But I have had an issue with Wi-Fi, and while Ethernet doesn't technically count as Wi-Fi, it's a very shaky cord, so I feel like any shuffling is gonna fuck something up.
That's good.
Yeah.
Well, don't move.
I won't. Feel better?
So,
Good.
It's been a while. How are you?
I've been pretty well. I haven't been well in regards to certain things I've watched recently, but...
Yeah, me too. I watched it today. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yes, it's Booksmart.
Okay. That's not what I thought you were talking about.
Fun story, if I may.
Sure.
Can we just dive right into the episode? Is that cool?
Oh, I was hoping, please.
Okay,
Yes.
terrific.
I'm dying to talk about whatever.
Great. Let's do this relatively in order. So I'm going to name drop Nomadland. Now let me back up. I feel like I haven't even started, and I already want to
Oh no, he fucking...
completely agree with any. Are you still there? Oh, see, this is the thing about the Ethernet cord. My foot knocked it. Did you hear anything I just said? Fucking Ethernet cord.
No,
What's up with the cord?
I heard it, but you're catching up to yourself now. Like your mouth stops moving, and then you keep talking, and then your mouth is like, and you're just catching up.
I swear.
Like that's what happens. You're good
down?
now.
Okay.
You're good now.
It's funny because I'm telling you, the cord on an Ethernet cable, right? Like, why is it so snug in like the wall outlet? Like it jams right in there, and you hear the click. And that click is, it's like a Pavlovian response. I feel fucking amazing. I'm like, I'm in the now. Like I am hooked into the universe right now.
Yeah.
And then this computer though, it flops out like a fish in on a boat. I don't get it. It just doesn't click. There's no click. I don't get it.
It's like, have you ever had, the way I'm starting this question, have you ever had sex? Have you ever had sex and then you like make the girl laugh and she laughs you out? Have you ever had that? Like at the end, not during, obviously.
I would have to look back on my experiences, but I can't say that I have a specific instance in my memory bank.
Oh, it's fun. It's great. It's a fun.
It sounds scary.
It's
it sounds
fun
like
for everybody. It's not painful. Comment below if that ever happened. We should have these like really random existential questions and then have people comment. Because
totally.
If we say something like, "What's your favorite movie?" Comment below. They're like, "Fuck these guys."
Yeah, they're like, "I hate movies. Nobody likes movies." Well, to be fair though, I think we've touched on this before. YouTube comments are seriously about, I would say, technically the most toxic. I don't have experience with Twitter, so I'm not sure how those two compare.
It
and
depends.
then I would say Facebook would technically be even below Twitter, YouTube, because YouTube's crazy. Like everything I see is just negative.
Well, I mean, you have to become something to have people comment on your YouTube videos. And even the one that we got about the Batman Returns thing, those weren't the most toxic. Like reading that, I was just like, I get what he's saying, but dude, this is a comedy. Like, this is a comedy podcast. We're joking. This is not, It's not all 100% true. And, like, you have to recognize the fucking, symbolism and, like, metaphors that we're making, blah, blah, blah. But, like, on Facebook, I feel like any post that can be divisive gets sent to all these other people based on their algorithms. So if you're not putting out negative content, or even, like good, positive things that pieces of shit will take negatively that can comment,
anything.
Pretty much anything. If you have an opinion on Facebook, I think that Facebook is the most divisive and the worst.
Interesting. I feel like there are more bots on YouTube. I'm basing this off of nothing, but it's just amazing to me that you can see so many negative comments on something that's so, like, not terribly divisive. I don't have an example at hand, but I would imagine people have experience with this.
Yeah, comment below, everybody.
Or to prove me right or wrong. I don't really give any shits about
Share with your friends. Write a review.
Anyway.
Subscribe. Ring the bell for notifications.
Yeah, whatever. Do that, don't do it. It's fine. So here's the thing I find about myself. Here's the thing I find about myself. I generally overwhelmingly agree with positive reviewed movies. And though the tomato meter is not a necessarily accurate aggregate, I generally do fall on the side of, if it is fresh, I'm with it. If it's like 90-something% fresh, especially, I'm really with it. Anything, I'm on that spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched Nomadland, and I didn't like it. And then I watched Booksmart, directed by Olivia Wilde, and it has like a 95% on the tomato meter. Like, this female super bad is how it's described.
Mm-hmm.
And I got 25 minutes in and I was like, I am good on this. I've watched enough of this to know that I will not find this funny, and I'm going to cash my chips in now.
Interesting. So
two movies back to back.
We'll talk about Nomadland more in depth because I just watched it, but
Certainly.
I have not watched Booksmart. What did you not like about it in the first 25 minutes? I mean, what?
I have to say, for me, comedy is a thing where, like, dude, I find so many things funny. I'm laughing at nonsense right now. Like, I laugh at, like, my cord fell out. That should make me angry. I'm, like, laughing about, like, the engineering mistake that this fucking cord is.
I mean, if we were banging, you'd laugh me right out.
See, that's what I mean. And I laugh at raunchy stuff. You just said something raunchy. That's funny to me. And I'm watching this movie, and the whole thing, for me, feels... Every joke, none of the jokes land, I should say, for me, personally.
Can you remember a joke?
Like...
Because that's the thing, too, is, like, with a comedy, I'm like, I need an example of how it's, like, how is the comedy in this movie?
Sure. I must say, I don't have a ton, but here's an easy one. The opening is, like, one of the friends picking up the other friend, and they just both start dancing, right? And I can't say I didn't find it, like, terribly unfunny. Like, it was well edited, and I get what they were going for, but it just goes on, and like, the awkwardness of the dance is supposed to be funny, I think. And
is it a credit sequence?
No, it doesn't take. It's not long enough to be a credit sequence. It's like, I don't know, 30 seconds to a minute. Like, just like, oh, you're still going. Oh yeah, like, they even mention it. Like, that's a line they say.
But why do they start dancing?
Just for fun, because they're like teenage girls. Like, they just meet each other. Like, I didn't find anything inherently wrong with that decision, but, like, it just wasn't funny to me. And the rest of the movie is like, she's a valedictorian, or at least one of the main characters is, and she's getting into Yale, and she's excited about that. And then she discovers that like her lamer cohorts who don't study as much and are kind of dumb also get into Yale, and she's like traumatized by this. Like that's what launches the plot of the movie, because she ends up wanting to then like experience a party and like do all that stuff before she graduates high school. And I like, it's not easy to get into Yale, you know. So like,
so it's me, like
it took me out of it.
It's a plot contrivance, and from that comes the comedy. So it's like, well, this isn't believable to begin with.
Maybe that's part of it, and I don't know if that's necessarily fair. Obviously, it's a movie; it doesn't have to be realistic. It was just weird, like Yale. That's an Ivy League school.
That's for me. When you're writing a movie like this, and I think this kind of goes into Nomadland, there needs to be some kernel of something that can keep tying you back to the reality of what the movie should be. So the reality of it, even if it's revealed at the end, I mean, that's your mistake not finishing it. Mm-hmm. But
that's true. I mean, you're not wrong.
What if it's revealed that they accidentally got in or something like that? Like, you need to. I think you can't give the audience all the details. But you also can't give the audience none of the details. You have to find a middle ground, and with one line of dialogue, you could keep you watching. I mean, from what you described, it sounds like more of like a lighthearted, endearing, weird dance scene, I guess. But I think of Superbad and how the main credits are like them dancing with like the silhouetted whatever. Right. And it's like a fun little, oh, this is a throwback weird, they're not dancing well. And it's like, that's not really a joke, but also not important, but cool.
That establishes the vibe. Yeah. And it's absolutely really well, because it's like a throwback to 80s movies, and it's really corny.
Yep.
And in this, it's a little, because it's not, they're real. Like, they're actually dancing. There's no animation over them like in Superbad. Yeah. And it doesn't last too long.
Is it like the cherry on top of the scene? Like, this is is it the end of the scene?
Yeah. Yeah. And they walk out and they dance, and it wasn't bad, but like, I just found myself the entire, like, every single joke that I was hearing, whether it be an overabundance of cursing or talking about sex or sex jokes or stuff like that, I was just like, this is all supposed to be like shocking, like quote unquote shocking. And maybe that's not the right word, because I don't think we as audiences are like shocked by anything anymore. I mean, it came out like last year, you know?
Well, was it like 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Regardless. I mean, you know,
I think it's
crazy.
It's the idea. It's the same idea behind Good Boys, where it's like, it's children swearing, so that's why it's funny. In Happy Time Murders, it's puppets swearing, that's why it's funny. With this, it's like, it's women swearing, that's why it's funny. I think there's this thing where it's like, it's not necessarily for you, it's for women, but we should be like, women should be getting better things, I guess. I don't know. I haven't seen it.
You do touch on something, and I was kind of trying to avoid that, to be totally honest, because I don't really think gender has much to do with my reason of dislike of the movie. I'm really not trying to inflame people here, because I know that's like a topic these days, and if it's a fair topic to discuss in terms of movie making, like, you know, having female versions of something. And it made me wonder if Superbad was as good as I remember, because I was like,
I don't think it is.
I am a man. And yeah, like, I was a teenager when I saw it. Like, if I was even as a man, or even as a male person, if I were a teenager, would I have enjoyed Booksmart? Like, I might have liked it a little more, because there is that raunch and that sort of language. But I don't know. I'm afraid to watch. I wanted to watch Superbad with Heather, because we were watching Booksmart together, and I was like, I kind of want to compare this with her and see how we both react to it at this point. I don't really want to champion Superbad in front of her, because I want to just watch it academically almost at this point.
You should, and it would be a good experiment to do, because she's never seen either. The thing with, because during the pandemic, it's still happening. During the beginning of the pandemic, Jackie, myself, and our roommate at the time, Ortega, we all watched Superbad. Mm-hmm. And I remember I watched it alone when I watched the first time. And I was like, this is funny, but I don't think it's as good as everyone's saying. I think it's a funny film. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's knockdown, drag out, amazing, hilarious. It also didn't, like, I didn't go to parties and stuff, so I didn't really reach out to me. Mm-hmm. And then after I saw it, I had started going to parties. So I was like, I get where okay, I've been to these like college house party kind of thing. Okay, I get it. Mm-hmm. But it didn't really hit me. So when I watched it again, I was like, this is still funny, but it's complete nostalgia driven kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. And that nostalgia is, of course, not there when you're watching Booksmart.
Exactly. So I think, and that's what I was getting to, but I think having Heather watch it would be an interesting juxtaposition because she also has not seen Superbad. So she would have none of the nostalgia.
Right. She'd have none of that value. But the thing is, too, she said she didn't like Booksmart. So she ended up finishing it when I was gone.
That's the thing. You should watch Superbad now and see what she says. And then we can just be like, well,
maybe Booksmart's
bad. Yeah. A woman didn't like a woman film, quote unquote. That's the thing that I hated, too. It's like, and I also think that plays into it, like the advertising of it, where it's like people were literally saying this is female Superbad, and it's
really
like
is close though. I have to say, I get why they're saying it. It makes it hard to be unique. Maybe it wasn't a unique movie to begin with, and that's why I don't like it.
Yep. I mean, female Ghostbusters. Everyone was just like, there was a big deal and hubbub about it being women Ghostbusters. I'm like, I don't give a fuck if women are doing it. I just want you to make a good movie.
It's so funny.
If you watch that movie, it's not good. Like, it's a bad film. It is strung together with shit shimprov, if you will. It's not good. So it's not because there are women in the roles. It's just because it's a bad movie.
It's interesting you say that. So Ghostbusters is a bad movie. I have not seen it. This is kind of conjecture, I suppose. But the reason that I would imagine it's bad is because I know that type of humor that is in that movie based on the cast and more specifically the director. And like the creative forces behind it. Yeah. And so it's so weird to me that like you have to call it a female Ghostbusters. Because if you removed that and it was like just a movie that happened to have female leads, it'd be fine.
Yep.
I think the same thing could probably be said about Ocean's 8.
Yep.
Or there's so many good examples, I think, now.
Yeah, the plot of Ocean's 8 is not the worst. If you just stop and I'm going to say this too. I think calling things the female this is really a negative thing to do because it's literally what you just said. Just call it a film. Mm-hmm. Like you're by calling it this, you're separating everybody from each other and then you're pitting people against each other and then you're creating this tension that should not have been there. But I think what it is it's not network executives, but movie studio executives being like, well, this is the only way we know how to market this. Mm-hmm. This is for the chicks. And it's like, you could get guys on too if you make a good fucking product and stop calling it the female something.
Yeah. It's funny too, though. I have to say, Booksmart, I think, was marketed as the female Superbad, but it's a different creative team. And Olivia Wilde, it was her directorial debut. And even though I only saw the first 25 minutes, but I was like, she seems solid at like,
framing a scene.
Yeah, exactly. And kind of like all that stuff. Yeah. And there was a good flow to it. It just didn't appeal to me personally. And I couldn't tell if that was because like it was a bad movie or if I am just not the audience. But the thing is, if it's a good movie, it doesn't matter because I'm usually good at just being an audience member and experiencing it. So it was a weird sensation. I would highly recommend kind of trying to figure out what your point of view is because I have no idea what I'm talking about.
Dude, I'll say this. So The Thing is notorious for having an all-male lead. It's like 12 dudes on screen, right?
Right, yeah.
If they remade The Thing, but didn't call it The Thing, like bought the rights, whatever, and like they did with, well, not really, because I think the creator of Rear Window sued over Disturbia.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, I remember something like that happened.
But Disturbia is Rear Window, right?
With teenagers.
Yeah, with teenagers. So the idea that I'm saying is like if you have an all-female-led, biology team in the Antarctic and they discover an alien species or whatever and like has some really good fucking effects, some really good characters just like the first one did, but remake it as like all women, but don't advertise it as that. Just advertise it as this is a good movie and make a good fucking movie. I think that would be a hit.
I mean, it reminds me of The Descent. That's an all-female cast. That movie's amazing. And
that movie's great.
It just is amazing. It has nothing to do with gender. It's just a great movie. And
that's how Michael B. Jordan tries to get movie roles. I think one of the early things that he was trying to do was have his agent give him scripts for white characters. Don't have it be it has to be a black guy.
Right.
So
totally.
he can play, because that's the best kind of role, is where it is interchangeable. You shouldn't have to be this is a white male in his 30s. Well, why can't it be a black guy?
Right. I mean, obviously that depends on the story they're trying to tell.
Obviously.
But yes, I do largely agree with you.
Yeah, it wouldn't make sense if Killmonger was white.
Exactly. Yeah, so, exactly.
I get what you're saying, but yeah, I think that's a great thing. And I wish that happened more, but we're still in this thing of we have to advertise it, so how do we say it? Oh, it's the female-led this. And it's how about you just...
make a fucking movie and
and also hire female directors.
It was so interesting, because speaking of female directors, both of these movies are directed by females. That's my transition. It has really nothing to do with anything.
Yeah, it kind of just buried the lead, or threw me under the bus.
Hire
female directors. Well, they did, and it failed.
Yeah, it was awful. No, so I think one of the things too about Booksmart, and this is actually the real transition here, I suppose, because this is a much better one, is I didn't really empathize with the characters. And in Nomadland, I didn't really empathize with the lead, which is interesting because
I'm so excited to talk about this.
The whole movie is them trying to make me empathize with her, but I just couldn't do it. There were other characters I did empathize with, but I couldn't do it with her.
Let's do a spoiler, because I'm going to say something that should have been laid down pretty early in the film.
All right, sounds good. So, major spoilers for Nomadland.
We're going far into this because this is the reason. Before you turn off, this is an Oscar-nominated film.
Mm-hmm. It's like leading the wave. I think I personally predict it will win Best Director. That is my prediction for the episode.
Great. Female director. She is Asian woman.
Chloé Zhao.
Yep. She really missed the mark for me. I fucking hated this movie.
You did? Really?
I hated it, yeah.
So you agree?
Yeah.
I didn't hate it. I have to say I didn't hate it. I just was like, this is not a movie that was made for me. Which again,
who is it made for?
Right? Yeah, because I do watch anything. I always think of it like this. If I can watch and appreciate Schindler's List, everything comes back to Nazis. I don't know if you knew about this, but then...
Because they are the literal incarnate of evil.
Yeah, it's awful. It's not it's not a fun movie to watch, but I occasionally, every once in a while, will watch it because the mood hits me and I'm just like, wow, this is just crazy. But watching Nomadland, which of course, the totally different subject matter, so I don't know even if these are comparable, but yeah. No, you go first.
This is the thing. Let me know if this would open up the entire movie for you.
Yeah. Oh, it's done. I don't think there's anything left there.
Hold on, I'll do it.
No.
Let me know. Let me know if this makes the movie better. She has a mental illness.
I don't. I see what you mean,
but it's revealed early on.
You're saying that would make the movie better?
Yeah, 100%. Because for me, watching the entire film, she just sounds like someone who is grieving. Obviously, she lost her husband, but you don't realize that until 45 minutes into the movie.
I think that the main reveal was that she lost her. Well, not the main reveal, but I think the main core for the story is that she lost both her husband and the whole life she had built for herself in this town that literally just doesn't exist. And the idea that not many people can identify with losing a literal town. You can identify with losing a loved one, but also losing your community and what you call home makes the grieving process that much harder.
So the idea is for this movie is that she is she's living this nomadic lifestyle. She's meeting all these people. And for some reason, we're made to believe that this is Like, is she lost? Does she feel fulfilled by doing these things?
Totally, she does.
She does not seem it at all. She seems so unhappy the whole movie. Did I miss something?
I don't think she seemed unhappy the whole movie, actually.
Really?
Yeah. That's interesting you say that, though. There are moments in the movie where she is definitely, like, skittish or on edge or unhappy. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
stressed
like,
out to the gills.
It's stressed out because of this life that she's choosing to live. It's this nomadic lifestyle. And it's like, for me, it's so whiny. I know this sounds terrible.
Oh, that's funny.
It's so whiny. It's a white woman complaining about living this life when you have thousands of people reaching out to you, offering you a home and a couch or a bed to sleep in. Like, everyone else around you is well off. Take them up on the offer. Why doesn't she? Because she has a mental illness.
That's so funny. That's how you interpret that. I have to say, I don't agree with any of that, actually, and I still didn't like it. So maybe it's a good movie because we're talking about so many different aspects.
But that's what made it like that was my Wonder Woman 84 rewrite of the movie. Like, if there was some sort of scene that clued you into like she's breaking down mentally because of this grief, and like and by the way, I am able to put myself into the shoes of someone who has lost everything. They've lost a job, they've lost a home, they've lost their loved ones. They don't feel, and that's the thing too, is like, I thought, this is how I interpreted it, that she was living this nomadic lifestyle because she didn't fit in with anybody. She couldn't find anyone that would, complement what she was going through. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay, I kind of get that. I still don't like this movie. And then this is what made me fucking hate it. She's living the same thing. Like, it's cyclical. Yeah, so she goes to Amazon every New Year, and then she has the campers, and then she goes to this same group that she was with earlier. And I'm like, she's just doing the same thing over again? And then she breaks the cycle to go to her home, and then she walks right through and right out the back, and now she's driving again. And I'm like, was that a goodbye? I mean, what?
No, it wasn't. She's just going to keep doing that.
She's going to keep doing it. There's no arc.
Her house.
This is shit.
so a couple things, because I think this is what's so interesting about movies to me, is like, you can honestly talk endlessly about them because you brought up so many things and my mind is going so many directions. I'm going to try to immediately address one that's easy to get rid of for me. And I said the same thing. She has no arc. And then it made me realize I had talked to somebody about A Star Is Born, and I said the same thing. And and they were like, well, movies still have to have an arc. Like, sometimes that's just what life is. And for me, so here's my thought on that idea, okay? Because movies don't need an arc. They don't need one. I think that most movies have one because it's more palatable and it's easier to understand the story, overall, like, thing that's going on that you're witnessing.
Yes.
But there are good movies that, are exceptions to the rule, and they kind of play with the format of what a movie can be.
Joker, he has no arc.
I mean, yeah, I was thinking, oh man, what was the other one? Memento is another one.
Yep, no arc. Well, but that's like an interesting way of telling a story. I mean, the story itself isn't that terribly interesting. It's the way that it's told. It's through these like 10-minute time jumps.
Yeah, and that is definitely a fair point.
What's another movie? What's that other Joaquin Phoenix movie where he's like an assassin? Not an assassin.
You Were Never Really Here?
Yes!
I loved that movie. I thought he did have an arc, though, in that movie.
He does. I'm just saying that, like, that's a similar type of film where it's like you're going on this journey and you don't really know where you're going, but then you finally get there and it all kind of makes sense. It's like a Michael Clayton as well, where it's like this long setup to get to this punchline.
Right.
But there's no punch for this fucking movie.
This is really kind of difficult all of a sudden, trying to think of like a movie without, I mean, I'm sure there are some out there. I just can't think of any. I mean, like Nightcrawler almost comes to mind, but that's just a bad person arc. Like, he does have an arc in that movie, but he ends up just becoming worse and more successful.
But that's an interesting character. There are other interesting characters around him, and he's also interesting. I feel like this was supposed to be her, Frances McDormand, and God bless her. I love her. I think she's great.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this has nothing. She even does a good job. She does. This is much more for me about just kind of what was going on. Yeah. I know you said a lot of things.
Yeah.
I want to dive into that. Please bring that up when you can. But I'm going a million different directions here. And an easy one for me was like when she's in the Badlands, she gets lost for like 2 minutes and then is immediately found again. And I was like, what happened there? What was the metaphor there? Is it that like when she drives around in her nomadic lifestyle, she sometimes gets lost, but then she's okay again? But if that's true, the whole movie is cyclical. So she's not really being a nomad. She just keeps going the same place. I don't know.
Well, the idea, I mean, and this is the whole point, and this is why I don't think it's a good movie. And it goes back to you can fill the audience in a little, or you can fill them in a lot, but you can't not fill them in at all. And to me, character-wise, this is just not filling us in at all. Like, it's the same with Wonder Woman 1984, where you're explaining all these things away to make the movie make more sense in my head, and that's what I did. And that is not correct. Like, I shouldn't have to rewrite the movie to be like, well, that's how that makes sense. Mm-hmm. You should at least clue us in a little. And I don't know.
Well, if I may, because I know you were mentioning that
Brian may.
Yes, exactly. And I may make things out of clay and lay by the bay. I don't know. What do you say?
I eat pieces of shit like you for breakfast. You eat pieces of shit for breakfast? No.
I think it's on. I've been meaning to watch that. I think it's on HBO Max. That's a good movie. So you're talking about like how she might have a mental illness. For me, the movie was like she doesn't have a mental illness. It's like I didn't empathize with her because like it didn't make sense to me, but I understand. Like I couldn't do it, but I get why she did it. For her, it felt like to me, she was this kind of person who was always wanting to do her own thing. And I don't think she was trying to do it to be different. That's just how her brain is wired. And I think there are people like that.
Yeah.
And I think that led her to randomly marry this guy. Her sister goes into this in detail. She marries a guy she's only known for
literally an hour and 15 minutes into the fucking movie.
Right. But to be fair, if you're looking at the movie as a cycle, that it doesn't really matter where it comes. It's almost like it's the beginning of the cycle again, or starting to get to that point. So, like, I guess for me, one of the things about the movie that a lot of people appreciate that I didn't give a shit about was that it was a cycle, and that you're watching just this moment in a person's life as it continues down this long path. And so I was like, that's artistic and it's well done in the sense that it's different and experimental in a way, but I just didn't care for it personally. Like critically, I can see why it was well received, but me, I was like, God, this is taking forever to get over. Holy fuck.
Well, that's the thing, is like it should feel like a revelation. When it's cyclical, it should feel like when you that moment of her walking back into Amazon, it should be the saddest moment in the movie. But it's all like her entire thing and the narrative of the story is to make you like identify with her and be like, you go, girl. Yeah, you do that. And it's like you're hurting literally everybody around you by pushing everyone away. And it's like, do you, and that's the thing too, is like she just didn't, because she keeps going through these cycles. Before I realized that it was cyclical, it's like it didn't seem like she was happy at all in any of the things that she was doing. Like she was just going through the motions of like trying to survive on the road and all this stuff, but it's not.
I guess for me, that was her grieving process, and she has that discussion with Bob, I think his name was, at the very end of the movie, and he was basically saying, some people like grieve and don't get over it, and that's fine. And so I think her version of grieving is like, okay, he's gone. I can't stay here. I have nothing, and I don't want to go back home. I don't want to do these things that people do. So I'm just going to get in this circuitous lifestyle. So like, I thought, I actually kind of appreciated that because I like it's interesting to get that perspective. Like, oh, you don't need to accept grief. You don't need to do anything. If that's what you want to do, if that's what makes you feel better, go live your life how you want to live it.
Yeah, go storm the Capitol.
I mean, okay, that's true. It's funny you say that, though, because you bring up mental illness, and like you could easily chalk it up to that. But I think you could easily chalk up like someone wanting to live on the road is not crazy to me. I've definitely
there's a difference between living on the road and doing the same thing like in a 12-month span, but like under the guise of I'm a nomad. She's not. She's really not. I mean, the idea of nomadic lifestyle is moving and going where the wind takes you, and trying to survive and meet new people along the way. That's great, but she's meeting the same people over and over again, and then you're supposed to be sad when one of them dies because of cancer or something, and you're like, I feel literally nothing from any of this stuff. I didn't feel anything, and I really think it's because like the character of her isn't fleshed out until 2/3 of the movie is done.
So, a lot of interesting things you're bringing up here. I really did.
I paid attention to this movie.
And I did. Yeah, I did too. It's interesting to me because there's so much to talk about in regards to this movie. It feels like for me, the scene with Swanky, and I would imagine at this point, hopefully only people who've seen this movie are listening, because this has turned into a full-on deep dive review into this movie. But Swanky, when she's introducing herself, she ends up having this monologue to Fern, Frances McDormand's character, about how she was...
Frances McDormand.
Frances McDormand. She's talking to Frances, and... Wanky's describing how she was kayaking down a river and she saw these birds and their nests were on the side of the cliffs, and there were eggshells in the river because the hatchlings had just hatched, or whatever you call them. And at that point I was fine to die because I was like, this is perfect. And there was that monologue, and there was another one like it. There were a couple of monologues. It was when this woman, whose name I forget, was talking about how she was thinking about committing suicide, but her dogs stopped her from doing so, or she was thinking about her dogs.
I remember that.
Those two scenes are specific examples for me of like, this movie is great, and there are some real humanity in these. There's so much visualization in the kayak story, so you can really like get those words and hang on to those words and build a real scene for yourself in your head. And then with the dog story, there's real emotion there. Like, I get dogs, and you don't really think of dogs like that all the time, but when it's presented to you in that monologue format and with like your life on the line, you're like, okay, like I get that. I totally get that. And it makes you feel like so sad that people have to go through those things, those periods of life.
I do want to say this about what was her name? The one that died of cancer? Swanky. She sends a video to Frances McDormand, and she watches, and it's like her going to that same place of like, and seeing all the birds fly out and like with the eggshell. So it's basically like, I'm going to die. This is where I'm going to die. Yes. And it's like, that's a specific thing where you can look at and be like, I know for certain that's exactly what this movie is telling me. That's exactly that. It's wonderful writing. It's a perfect bookend to her story being in the movie.
Definitely.
Everything else, what happened?
Well, as an addendum to what Swanky was going through, I thought it was interesting they'd bring up Jack Kevorkian's book.
Yes,
because you don't actually know if she died naturally or if she died of suicide, and I don't think it really matters either way. But it just ends or adds another wrinkle to that story to make it something to chew on. That's
the thing. That's the part you could chew on. You're like, did she actually commit suicide there, or was it natural causes? That's a thing that can be left open interpretation. Yeah.
And then with Frances McDormand, you're just kind of like watching her drive around, and the whole time I guess
you watch her. I just thought of that scene where she walks through her house and then walks out the back door, and it's like The Searchers with John Wayne. Like, did you notice that? It goes through the back.
She decides to, actually cross the threshold from the inside out, but she's going to end up doing it again.
Yeah.
So I don't really know what the, I have to say.
What were you saying before? I'm sorry. I interrupted.
Well, the whole movie, it felt like nothing was happening.
Mm-hmm.
I saw beautiful imagery, and there were reveals near the end that made you think on what you had seen. But even though I had seen these things, they didn't ultimately really add into what was going on. And so the story literally for me is she is grieving. This is her grieving process. It's abnormal, but that's okay. And it's not the worst, like she's doing it for herself. But what I saw was like her driving and her like chatting with people, and like it just didn't resonate for me.
Yeah. I also hated the idea of her quote unquote finding happiness in working, like just being a worker bee and going to all these different jobs, like fucking,
Amazon fucking sucks, bro.
Amazon and not slicing potato, but gathering potatoes. Was that a job?
Totally.
And then
yeah, it was. That was actually the one that I thought looked the most fun, which is crazy.
Fucking breaking bricks or whatever she was doing. And it's just like, so you're working all these jobs, you have enough money, and then it like your van breaks down, you put a bunch of money into the van, you have to pay for the van, and then you have to go to your sister's house. And then it's like you keep hurting other people by all of the actions that you're taking, and that's great that it's your grief or whatever, it's your process, but don't treat everyone like shit who's trying to help you.
I mean, like her sister?
Her sister, and then also the guy can we talk about the guy?
Well, I want to talk about the sister real quick. I just want to put a pin in that, because I sort of disagree with that. I think she is hurting her, but I also think that's almost her way of communication. Like some people are just wired differently. I think some people, I didn't see her to be an asshole necessarily, but I thought like at that point in their relationship, like she's calling her sister and being like, like who I am and what I've done. I'm reliable for the money. I'm not trying to hurt you, but I'm doing my own thing. So why are you making this difficult? Like, help me out here. And so her going back home and her sister kind of acknowledging that, like her sister at one point even says, like, you left me all alone or something like that to that effect. And I was like, hey, she's an adult and she can do whatever she wants. And for her, she wanted to marry this guy and go live in the middle of the desert. And she seems like she feels she made a great decision. So that kind of stuff was like, she's not intentionally trying to hurt anybody. She's just trying to do her own thing. And her own thing is being what she is. And that is what she is.
And you and I disagree on this, where I think she seems unhappy. And I didn't get it from the performance that she seemed happy doing all these things, except when she was with other people. Like it was and I can, like, to bring up comedy, I can relate to that, where the car drives are like grueling and they suck. And then you get to the place where you're going, and it is a nomadic lifestyle, right? You go to a new town, you go tell jokes, you get to meet everybody, and then you leave on the road again. So if that was what I was getting from that, then sure. But also, I feel like I don't treat people shitty, maybe. I don't know. Like, I can sleep on someone's couch, Like, she couldn't sleep in someone's bed. She would go sleep in the van.
But that's like, that's you protecting your lifestyle and wanting to do that. Like, it's like, I don't know if this is the same thing.
Well, Kev, I'll admit I have a mental illness. But they didn't say that in the movie.
I mean, I don't know. I guess, I don't know. Let's move forward, because I must say I forgot what I was going to say. There's so much going on in my head about this. I'm sorry. There's bound to be a couple things I'm going to miss, but like you were talking about how let's just move on. Move on.
I'm loving this. Okay. Here, I'll say something else and we'll see.
Well, you were talking about how we were talking about her sister and how you thought she was kind of being an asshole, how she was trying to crash on couches and how she's like protecting. I was thinking she's protecting her lifestyle. I don't know. I guess how she's unhappy. I want to touch on this. Okay. You said you thought she was unhappy.
I got something else too. So you say this and
okay.
I'll say mine.
So you were thinking she's unhappy, and I'm thinking I don't think she's happy, but I think she's content and she likes what she's doing. This is why I think that. The movie suggests that she's definitely that kind of person who's doing these things for herself, and there are little moments that she is appreciating things. So when she's in the Badlands, she appreciates it aside from getting lost. Although I guess this would actually add to your theory because she goes off on her own, gets lost, and is scared, and then is found by David Strathairn and is happy again.
Yeah.
So there's a little metaphor there that would probably help you. But how about when she's like floating in the river? That's like an easy example for me of like, okay, so she is liking the solitude to an extent. But then she's also...
I like solitude sometimes also, but if someone else wants to, I don't know, live in a house, I wouldn't get judgy because their fucking van tire's flat. I mean, like, she's such an asshole. She really is. I mean, that's fine if you want to go ahead and do that, but she literally left there because he had settled down in a house. But literally, the moment after that conversation, she is holding, and he says that he likes her, and then she's holding the baby and like connecting to the baby, and then she fucking ups and leaves again.
I didn't get that at all. It's
such a and literally again, mental illness. I think that we can come back to that and explain as to why it's such a wishy-washy type of thing.
Maybe for her though, she wasn't ready to try to get into that type of lifestyle or like that type of connection specifically. Mm-hmm. Maybe she like just loved. It's not just about losing her husband. It's about the community. So feels untethered from everything that she has built for herself. So I think maybe you could explain it and say she liked what she was doing there. She liked the people and she was feeling like a child, but she wasn't ready to make that leap. Mm-hmm. Are you still there? Can you hear me?
I'm still here. I can hear you. Yeah, you're back.
Okay, I don't want to break the train of thought here because this kind of reminds me of Manchester by the Sea. You saw this.
I didn't see it.
Okay, I can't tell you the ending to that.
Well, no, I bought it, and then the moment I bought it, Casey Affleck, it came out that he was a piece of shit.
It's a great movie. I mean, I don't know what to say. It's a great movie. I don't want to comment on that, but like, it's a great movie.
I know. It just really makes it tough.
That would actually be a perfect counter to this movie, where it's like a man who is definitely grieving and is going through like an asshole phase, as you might say, honestly. And I'm not trying to be like a dick. Like I get where you're coming from. But somehow you find empathy there and there isn't an arc and yet there kind of is to an extent.
And I'm willing to, two things. I'm willing to bet that there's an arc because it's well written.
Kenneth Lonergan is a great writer. He's been nominated for a few Oscars, and I believe he's a playwright originally.
As for this, it's based on a book. So I am fascinated as to what the book is. And the nice thing is a book about solitude, it clues you in as to what the character is thinking.
That is true.
Most likely.
Very, very fair point.
With this one, you have to infer fucking 99% of the film, and it's not consistent based on anything that, like, you're going this way, you're going that way. And I would just really like to be clued in a little more so that I don't say things like, you know, she's has a mental illness and she's grieving at the same time and she's lost everything and pushes people away. Meanwhile, you have a completely different interpretation. And if that's what you're going for, fine. But it's based on a book, and I'm pretty sure the book wasn't going up for interpretation because there's more words on the page than minutes in this movie.
Or dialogue in this movie, or like
that too.
Anything, really. There are a couple things I really want to get to about this.
Please do.
But let's well, the one thing I was curious about was like she gets into this argument with her, I think, brother-in-law's friend.
Yeah.
And he's talking about home ownership, and she's saying, hang on, Heather just arrived. Hello. Hey, how are you? She is saying, okay, it is wrong to have like this younger generation going into debt, taking loans, taking money they don't have, buying these houses and being like totally screwed financially for their foreseeable future. And I was like, I kind of get what you mean.
I agree.
But it's also like the way that he seemed to be talking about it, like I get what he's saying too, which is just, it is like, that's what life is right now. Like that's how the game is played. So like there are properties out there. You kind of have to play your cards right. You can't just, if I wouldn't recommend taking out a loan for something you can't afford, for example.
Yeah.
But, you know, like if you can figure those things out, like definitely go for it. And why not? I mean, having a house would be pretty cool if you can afford it.
Yeah. I mean, agreed. I think there's,
and so and then but the final point is she then goes to work for Amazon, which is the hellhole shithole like example of the world.
It's literally,
and I'm like, wait a minute. So
it's the face of capitalism, like evil.
Yeah, and so she's bad-mouthing all this shit, and then she willingly is going there year after year to work for like 3 months to fund a trip. I don't know where her money goes, by the way. I guess
that's what I thought.
You know, she's making $500. How much was it to live at the campsite? It was like $300 a month, right? I mean, it was really cheap. I feel like it was cheaper than that.
Yeah, I can't remember.
Had to be so cheap, but like
I know her van cost $2,400.
I don't know how many hours.
I think her van cost $2,300 to get fixed, which price is gouging.
Insane price, dude. Yeah. Like unless she had the entire engine replaced, which I don't know. But like, I just didn't understand. Yeah, like where is that money going? She's working a variety of odd jobs and is literally not buying anything. She's getting stuff from a free pile, and she's shitting in a bucket, and it's like.
Yeah, you can go to a store and
food budget.
Are we on a delay?
I don't know. I'm good.
I feel like I keep interrupting you. Cuz like
I think it might be the delay.
I'll start talking when you are not talking, and then you start talking again, and then you keep talking, and I'm like, "Oh shit, can he not hear me yet?"
I don't know. I don't feel like I'm talking over you too much. I feel like I'm trying to wait till you're finished, or if I think you're finished, I want to interject before I lose my thought. But I'm not like actively talking over you as far as
I'm doing that too. I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, and at 3, I want you to give me a thumbs up. Okay.
Okay, go.
1, 2, 3. Huge delay.
Huge delay. How about this? Let's both not try to interrupt one another at all and just finish the thought.
Okay.
Okay.
What were we saying?
So basically she is bad-mouthing capitalism and all this stuff, which makes sense, and I get where she's coming from. But then she turns around and relies on working at Amazon as a form of income. And it's all very odd to me. And I don't know what that means. Hypocritical?
You don't know where her money's going? That's what you said?
That's another thing.
Yeah. And I think it's because this movie... This is what it feels like to me. It's surface level understanding of everything this movie's trying to say. Like, it doesn't have... It has 2 hours to delve into everything. It's a long... It's an hour and 49 minutes, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And it feels like 4, and it doesn't cover, like, that's a small, tiny scene, and it's truncated by hypocrisy because she works for Amazon. But that's like, The Big Short is a long film, and it delves into like the housing crash and all this stuff, and like that's an interesting piece of art that talks about something. You have 1 3-minute scene talking about the housing thing, and it's so fucking surface level. And it's like, she immediately gets angry. And it's like, there's no conversation to be had here.
Yeah, well, I think part of that is like I mean, you're right. It's actually kind of hard to defend, because my original defense would be like, well, she's not experienced to that sort of group in her lifestyle. So she's usually with like-minded individuals. So when she hears something like this, she's like, oh, this fucking guy. It'd be like maybe to her listening to like a Trump supporter or like a science denier.
That's ironic, because to me, she seems like a Trump supporter. All those small town people that she's like hanging out with, I mean, I know this sounds awful, but I would not be surprised if all of them.
It's so funny you say that.
Voted absentee for Trump.
It's so funny you say that. I actually kind of was wondering that myself because they're in that age range.
Yep.
Another thing that I kind of thought was maybe they were all hippies. Like they were hippies in the 70s or the 60s who did like that whole Woodstock and living on the road and dirty feet thing. And then they maybe bought into the system a little bit, but as they got older, we're like, you know what? No, screw this. We're going back to that nomadic lifestyle.
And I'm fine with that, but I wanted more like it feels like a documentary.
Mm-hmm, it does.
Because of the frame rate, it's a very real life lifestyle, and they're going for that, which I totally understand. And they also have real people like who aren't actors playing the roles around them, which I'm also fine with, except for they all sound like they're acting. They don't sound naturalistic; they sound like they're acting, which really took me out of it. But other than that, I mean,
especially not Swanky, but the other one.
Yeah.
I don't remember her name, but she really... Also, the person that worked the counter at the van stop where she was living at the very beginning.
Yep. It was... I wanted more tangible things to chew on. And I understand that it's supposed to be like a character study, but at the same time, you have to give me an interesting character that I can get behind to live vicariously through their eyes and see all these things. But you're not giving me anything interesting about the character until 45 minutes to an hour in, and by then I've basically checked out. I don't care about anything. And then you're also giving me on top of it, not explaining fully as to why this person's such a jerk, and then you tell me and I'm like, fucking go to therapy. I mean, like, I understand that this is your grieving process, but to me, you're pushing everybody else away that genuinely does love you, and you could find grief counseling through them, technically, if you talked about these things. And I understand that some people are isolated and closed off, but to me, I mean, it would make the movie a whole lot better if you either explain why she's like this, or also give me more of the characters that she's meeting and like actually have a lasting kinship with these people. Like maybe she, like, I don't know, this might be asking too much, but don't nomads travel together? Like, aren't these other people that are at these places that she's going to like nomads themselves and they travel together in groups? Or are they all individualistic nomad type things? That's
a good question. I actually don't know. I see what you're saying. I think I have heard of it as like more of a community nomadic lifestyle.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's got to be.
She's a lone wolf. And, I get that idea too, because being a comic, you're kind of a lone wolf on the road. You meet people. And that's the thing too, is like, I feel like it's not well written because it didn't get me. And I'm a guy who fucking traveled before this pandemic. I was, I lived in my car for 3 weeks in Florida. I'd hit a hotel. I'd sleep in my car, and then I'd hit another hotel the next weekend. Then I'd sleep in my car, hit another hotel, and I was just sleeping in fucking parking lots and being alone. And, I'm still attached to the world. I have a computer, and I'd go to Starbucks or some shit.
But I feel like that comes back to the idea that it's, like, not just her husband that she lost, but like her whole community that she's been at for like 30 some years.
Okay, well, I've lost my comedy community for the past year.
But you have your home, like I'm not trying to make light of your situation at all, but like that's why I think it was hard for me to understand her character, is because she has gone through something that I don't think I've seen before in a movie portrayed.
Yeah.
That is that communal loss. Like that's a crazy idea to me.
Well, then, okay, so if we're going with that logic, then once you find a community that you fit in with, why don't you stay with them? She keeps going to all these other communities, like the Amazon community, the potato picking community, the fucking RV community, the one guy who has the big beard and he has a thing about his son community, and then she goes back to all these places. And it's like, are you feeling them out? Are you dating these communities? Like, there's no sense of her finding any solace in these things because she doesn't seem happy. To me, because she keeps going and looking for this happiness, and then it's cyclical, and I'm like, I'm down for the count. I mean, there's no,
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting perspective. I see what you're saying there, and I mean,
let's watch it together. We'll do a live commentary on our Patreon.
We should. There was one last thing I want to talk about with you with it before we've exhausted it completely, because I'm pretty much anyway. Last thing and then final thoughts. Okay. So normally when I first heard of the movie, couple things. I thought that it was supposed to be her traveling all around the entire United States.
Yeah.
And living kind of like a retired person's lifestyle almost. Certainly working odd jobs here and there to make ends meet, but overall, like, you know what? I'm done with this, and I'm just going to go live in wherever I want to be for a little while because I can do it. And and that's what I want to do. And it ends up doing just West Coast, desert area, totally cyclical type thing. So I was kind of disappointed in that aspect.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was going to say is I kept hearing that it was going to be like an expose, or at least, a representation of this lost generation and how disconnected we all are with the government. It seems like was something I had heard about, or like that lifestyle Americans are going through with like the recession. And I thought there would be like an economic slant to it.
Yeah.
And it kind of was, but none of this was explored to me. It was very much an insular experience, and it was much more about, I guess, the relationship she was making with the people she met.
We got that with the infographic at the beginning, and we got that with the 2-minute scene in the backyard, and that was fucking it. Mm-hmm. That was it. Yeah, that was all we got. That was like, this is tied to reality. And it's such a bummer because, like, it could have been great, but it's really not saying anything. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I'm not a fan.
Yeah.
At all.
Final thoughts for me. I saw where it was going about 45 minutes in, and I was just like, I don't think I like this, but I'm going to finish it. And then it was Heather needed to take a break with about 8 minutes left. And normally I'd be like, dude, this is the climax. Like, just hang on a sec. But this time I was like, honestly, I literally don't care. Let's pause it. Like,
she's already back at Amazon. We know what's happening.
Yeah, I don't care. It's fine. So great cinematography.
Was it though?
Yeah, it was. It was good.
Yeah.
I thought, honestly. I mean, I guess it's hard not to photograph natural beauty in an amazing way, or at least a solid way. There was a very like lived in feel to it all, and a very like rustic, wildernessy feel to it. So that worked for me.
Yeah.
But the movie I did not like. I could not recommend it to anybody. It didn't inspire anything in me. I had no empathy for anybody. And by the time it was over, I was like, thank God we can watch Always Sunny, because like I'm ready for some content.
That's the thing. I didn't feel anything after it was done. Like, I've watched a lot of documentaries lately on, like, Michael Moore documentaries, like Roger and Me, Capitalism, A Love Story. Mm-hmm. I watched those and was, like, angry after they were done. I was livid. I watched The Big Short as well. Just livid. And this movie, which it's dealing with those things, the loss of a community, I felt literally nothing, because that was the... And maybe it's one of these movies where that's supposed to be like in the back of your head, but you're not thinking about it. You're thinking about her forming these relationships, but it's like they feel phony to me. They don't feel like kindred spirits, because she's not going to them. Well, she did go to Stacy or Kusi, Swanky when her tire was flat. Yeah,
because she didn't have one.
Yeah, and then she was also an asshole to her when she's like, you got to do this, you got to do that. She's like, thanks, yeah, I got it. And it's just like, to be fair, you don't got it. So, I mean, listen to Swanky. She's been out here for ages. Mm-hmm. She knows what she's talking about.
It was funny how Swanky was, or she's, at one point, Frances McDormand says, I have to say, this is more than I thought it was going to be. I'm not flaking out on you, but it's more than I thought. And I was like, you do have a point. Like, I kind of see what you mean because you didn't realize what you were getting into. But, like, you also didn't have a tire on you and got a free trip into town and got that whole sorted out. And I don't know. I didn't give a shit about it. Things suck around here. And it just didn't. I've wanted to live that lifestyle. I wanted to say.
I know.
I actually had plans. Like, when I was done living in Spain, one of my thoughts was, why don't I just make enough money to like bike around the U.S. or Michigan or take some time off, like a big chunk, like literally maybe not a year, but like 8 months or so, and just kind of travel around. And but then I saw this movie and I was like, why would you want to do this all? Like, even doing it all the time, like you could probably pull off better than what they're accomplishing. I thought.
Yep.
That just looked miserable. I mean, how is it? It can't be that bad to do that in other. It was.
But I
didn't get it.
That's the thing. That's the problem I have with it, where it's just like it's painted as such misery, but aren't we supposed to say she's doing what she wants to do? Like, there's no connection between, like, I don't know. I mean, it is tone. It's not even tonally all over the place. It's the same tone. It just can't settle on what it's trying to say. I think that's the problem. So,
well, I'm happy we talked about this because it's good to know you felt a similar way. Unfortunately, that means we don't have time to talk about Justice League, which was the whole fucking thing I wanted to talk to you about.
Dude, I know.
It's just weird coming across a movie that has such high ratings and watching it and being so disconnected from the experience and being like, how though? How?
Yeah. I don't know who watched it and liked it.
I mean, like, seriously, like, come on. Did Jackie watch it with you?
She watched the end and had a lot of questions. And then I said at one point, this is the most dialogue the movie has had the entire time. So you're being filled in on everything as they're talking.
Don't worry, the expedition is at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I don't get it. I had no connection to this main character until minute 120. And I was like, there's fucking 28 minutes left. This is crazy.
Yeah. That's so, yeah.
Did they not have the... I don't know. Did they not have the first chapters of the book? I mean, how did this happen?
Right. Well,
Justice League next week,
everybody. And we'll talk about Justice League next week. And that movie was amazing, though. So,
spoiler alert, that was incredible.
It really was. I really enjoyed it. We'll talk about it later. It sucks because we can't jump in on the awesome clicks net right now because it's the fever has taken over. There's probably a community out there just feverish for Nomadland content, though, right?
I'll tell you, no one in the movie is going to listen to it, so that's good because they have no internet connection except Frances McDormand. She did.
I'll tell you this much.
She had an iPhone at one point.
Well, she had an iPhone the whole time, which was funny to me because I realized, wait a minute, you don't bump into these people on down the road like Bob the Santa Claus man is saying, because you can just call him. Like, just give him a text. Hey, David Strathairn, I made a mistake. I'm coming back home. Like, you're the man. I love you in the Bourne Ultimatum.
I forgot he's in that.
Yeah, he was really good in Good Night and Good Luck, actually. But that's the one I feel like he's most well known for. But, man, you know, this movie is...
she had a phone!
Right. It didn't produce Nomad Man, because I was mad. Did you get it?
I did.
Okay. You didn't laugh as all.
Well, that's the title of the episode. We're pulling a Nomadland and making the thing revealed right at the end the first thing you see.
One mad man after Nomadland. Was not funny.
That's the fucking title, baby.
All right. Well,
thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.
Deuces. Don't go see Nomadland. If you have Hulu, just don't watch Booksmart either. Just watch. I don't even watch Boss Level. Don't watch anything.
Like, genuinely, if anyone has seen any of these movies, fill us in. Let us know what you think, and we'll have a conversation about it on the.
I don't even watch it. They're just going to lambaste us.
They won't.
Lambaste or whatever, however it's pronounced, and if you ever bring this up on a website, like I was going through Reddit, and which I know again is, of course, God, you can. Oh my God, I don't even want to get into it.
Is this still the episode?
Yeah, it is. So this is an addendum to the episode. So Prologue. I'm on Reddit. I'm reading Booksmart reviews, or like people are posting comments about it, and a couple things I noticed were all the negative comments got downvoted.
Yep.
And even people that had like legitimate things that verbalized what I was experiencing, and I was like, yes, I see why you said that. Actually, like I don't know why everyone's raving about this. It's not very good, and it's just relies on stupid humor. It's not very funny. And it kind of makes you wonder if there are like paid bots. Like all of this is an illusion, Michael, and like they're just trying to prop it up to get awards consideration or more money or whatever.
I had that. I think I said this on the podcast. I had a suspicion that people from Marvel were shitting on DC when Batman versus Superman came out, because Civil War was like right around the corner.
It was scheduled to come out on the same day, but then I think Batman versus Superman ended up moving forward, so like ahead of schedule, so that they wouldn't have to battle Captain America.
And my theory was that Marvel would, because when we saw it, I mean, I still think it's not as bad as everyone says, and it's even coming around. I think it's getting some like cult status now.
I know, it's so funny. That's actually something I wanted to touch on in the Justice League episode.
Well, we will
nailed it in our initial review when BVS first came out. We were like 5 years ahead of the curve, and we were a couple of young drunkards at the time, and we nailed it. So
Nestor sent me some texts. You said you're proud of yourself. Nestor sent me some texts that we'll talk about on the next episode of Justice League, and we'll talk about Batman versus Superman Redux, and this was the bad, that'll be the good, and then we got to find something to be the ugly.
Okay, I'm thinking, and I don't feel like being offensive, so I'll drop my joke at the very beginning of the next episode.
Perfect.
Okay, bye everybody, pieces.
Bye.